Hi everyone, this is De-escalation Techniques. We want to discuss how we can calm individuals who are agitated or are having stress reactions with words and body language and not medication. So stress reactions in persons with dementia are a type of behavior that these individuals exhibit when they can no longer effectively manage in their environment. They can't communicate effectively verbally, and therefore their communication can be expressed as irritability, agitation, crying, yelling, constant motor movements like pacing. Major concerns with people who have dementia and stress reactions, really we're talking about safety. So the safety of that individual, of others, of property. Sometimes we'll have problems with public behavior, and we always have that communication problem. For the safety of the person, we want to really consider that there could be physical abuse by others, or verbal abuse or neglect. We could see con artists who will attempt to fraud those individuals. We could have theft by family or friends, wandering or elopement, and then other types of medical emergencies. Others, we need to consider that the individual could be abusing the caregiver. We have worries and concerns about driving, verbal aggression, unsafe housing, and unpredictable reactions to our approach to help them. Property, if they're living in the home, we could have problems with sanitation and home maintenance, but we also have other concerns as far as property goes, like finances. Are they able to handle their finances? Who is handling their finances, and is that done in a way to benefit the individual? We could see problems with shoplifting or gifting items because they no longer have that control to understand that process. And then concerns with money, banks, jewelry, land, etc. Sometimes when we deal with this, we're talking about some paranoia, and people will say something was taken, and it may or may not have been. They may have forgotten where they put it for safekeeping. They may have gifted it to someone, and then they might want it back. A lot of different scenarios can happen. Public behavior, we could see bad language or inappropriate behavior, unexpected responses, people who have problems following directions or not obeying the rules or expectations of society. We also might have false reports about the neighbors or other family members. The individual might call the police and want to get the police involved or actually call them and ask them to come in. And either one of those could be problematic. The police are usually pretty good about those types of things, but they also don't want to end up having multiple calls that they need to follow up on. So we really come down to the communication problems. An individual who has dementia has had a true shrinking of the brain, and so their brain is not working as well. It starts in the frontal lobe and works its way backwards, and we lose more and more ability to communicate and interpret what's going on around us as that progresses. Our individuals will make no sense. They'll change their story in an interview. They'll have repeated offenses or refuse to comply. So we had an individual who had some delirium at Tiger Place. She does have a little dementia, but it's not usually problematic. And they started a new medication. And she had some pretty significant delirium as a result of the beginning that medication. She was positive that people were poisoning her food and water, so she wasn't drinking. She had to have water that came out of the tap, and she had to get it herself. So we were trying to get her fluid status back up, and encouraging her to drink, and so we had to prompt her to fill her glass with water herself and encourage her to um, drink that. And she had to see that she had done it herself. And she was wanting to call the police and get them involved because nothing seemed right to her. And she would repeatedly say, I know this might sound crazy, but I'm not crazy. And she knew she wasn't quite tracking well, but she also couldn't stop herself from not tracking well. And so it was kind of a double-edged sword. And they um, stopped that medication, and even by the next day she was a ton better. But it took about 3 or 4 days before she was back to her baseline. It's hard for family members when that happens, and it's hard for any other care providers as well. And they don't understand why it's occurring. Sometimes the physicians will want patients to continue that medication until that delirium goes away, and other times they'll stop it or change it right away. So the problem really lies is that this illness is so slow, it's hard to identify, it's not consistent, everyone acts different. Motor skills are good for a very long time, but self-awareness and monitoring isn't possible. And social skills might be okay for quite a while, but they could also fluctuate and come and go. So when we have someone who is escalating, we have really some risk levels that we need to consider. There's low, high, and emergency. Our low risk individuals are calling out, or fidgeting and restless, or pacing and walking urgently. Our more high risk people have a raised angry tone or threatening language. They might be screaming. They could do self-harm, but they usually aren't aiming at harming others. And then those people who fall into that emergency situation are have those previously raised voices, but also maybe brandishing weapons or fists, have a fighting posture, damaging property, injuries to self, and escalating to injuries to others. But really, what are they trying to tell us? And this is where it really comes down to. We need to really consider what is going on so that we can help manage these individuals and process what their needs are and move them forward. So first of all, we need to consider physical discomfort. Everything from hunger, thirst, pain, if they are uncomfortable, if they can't get to the bathroom or are trying to find something. And then side effects of medications can fall into that category as well. They may have some unmet social needs. They might be bored. They could feel a lack of privacy, feel abandoned, or lack of respect. And a lot of what we convey in our tone of voice and how you address them really makes a difference there. With the individual we had a couple weeks ago, I had time, and so I sat with her and I talked with her for about an hour and just visited with her, made eye contact, and when things got a little bit slow, I would question her about something like, well, tell me about this ring you're wearing, or and how you got that. It's really pretty. Or have her talk about her husband or her children. Something that's neutral, and redirect them into another direction about something they like to talk about and would like to share. And then inappropriate care approach is really easy to fall into because we get busy and we get hurried and rushed. And when we do that, we often have ineffective communication techniques. And this is where that bathing without battles comes in and helps people who really truly can't communicate at all to feel much more comfortable and safe. So even your tone of voice can demonstrate disrespect, and you need to try to ensure that you can change the tone of voice so that that doesn't happen. Gaining trust and expecting what is realistic and not outside of the expectations of the patient's condition will be helpful. And then if the environment's not supportive, so just for example, if someone comes to play music but it's too loud and it causes people to start to pace or get agitated, then they need to be pulled away, further away from the music, or maybe they need to go back to their room during that time. Distractions or uncomfortable temperatures, the lighting and seating, all of those things can make barriers for people with dementia and can make it more difficult. We know that when individuals with dementia, when the timing starts to get to around the evening time, then they have a tendency to sundown. And so those are good times, especially to try to redirect or keep the individual occupied in a way to distract that sundowning behavior. Dementia patients also have lower stress thresholds, so you want to realize that they can't deal with daily stress as well, and that increases their susceptibility to stressors. So if they're expecting someone to come at such and such a time, then and that gets canceled, they may not be able to handle that disappointment of having that activity canceled. And then their behavior or their stress responses are going to be more significant because of that. When we deal with individuals who are escalating, we want to really think about 10 main things. You want to respect their personal space, don't provoke or anger them intentionally, establish some good verbal contact. You want to be concise and repeat yourself, but you also want to express using your communication techniques and reflect on what they're feeling. It looks like you're really frustrated, or that must be very frustrating. Not showing judgment, but just restating what you're hearing can really help. Listening. You don't have to agree with them, and you don't have to disagree in the same way they're disagreeing. But you can come to that common area where you can agree that you're not going to agree. It just means pick your battles. Don't fight through a situation. And then there may be times when we need to be safe and we need to lay down the law, and there may be times where we can go a little bit with the flow. So if we have someone who wants to really leave the building, maybe we can walk around the building with them. We can text a coworker and let them know where we're at. And when that person starts to look tired, text a coworker and have them bring a wheelchair so that we can help them get comfortable and then get them back to their room. If it's 20 below zero outside, that's probably not going to work, and we need to figure out a different way to help distract them because of the cold. And then we also always want to go back and debrief our the patient and the staff and figure out what worked, what didn't work, and how we can improve. That debriefing is important for our own mental health, but it's also can be really important for family members and other staff members so that they don't feel like they've done something wrong, that was horrible. They can move forward with their care providing in a positive manner. So always consider what you can control. And when we do that, we want to also consider what's safe for our residents or our patients. So we know that we can control our own behaviors and our own responses, and we don't have to get angry or yell or do anything like that. We can keep control of those things. Our patient may not be able to do that. So keep your facial expressions calm. Keep your tone of voice calm. Appear laid back and calm. But also make sure that you can give your patient a choice when they have it. Usually you want to do one or two things, like do you want to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt? And keep the choices fairly limited for them, because they're not going to be able to make a lot of different decisions. You also want to make sure that our residents have space. So if they're angry and threatening and they have their fists up, we want to give them the space they need so that they don't feel like we are trapping them. So take a step back, give them about a 45-degree angle. Don't come right up in front of them, straight in front of them. Kind of back off at a 45-degree angle. It lets them see that there's a flight path, a getaway option, and keep about 2 arm lengths away, so that you can make sure that they can't grab a hold of you, and you also have a getaway option as well. So you want to back up and give them space, that 45-degree angle. You want to listen and validate their feelings, like I mentioned. So anytime to validate, you're going to restate what you're hearing. You appear to be angry. I want to hear what is making you angry. That seems really frustrating. We can surely help with that frustration. Let's figure out a plan to help avoid that. Avoid the power struggles. It's time to eat right now, or it's time to take your bath right now. They have dementia. They're going to forget in 5 or 10 minutes. You can come back and ask them again in a few minutes if they would like to try the red or the blue shirt again, and give them some choices. Treat them with respect. Be patient, and focus on their abilities. So give them just the right amount of support and choices that they can handle, but not anything that is beyond what their abilities actually are. So some examples, and we'll see some videos too that will help you to put these into place, and we'll also practice some de-escalation techniques at our next seminar session. So if the resident says something like, "Don't hurt me," then it's safe to say, "You're safe here." And having your palms open and up is a safe gesture that is more welcoming. So that is a really good way to hold your hands when you're talking with people. If the resident is threatening to hurt someone, it's great to say, "I don't think that's a good idea. Let's talk about that. It appears you're really angry." If the resident is angry and emotional and he wants to talk, let's set some conditions so he can tell you his concerns. So they may repeat themselves over and over and over again, and that's okay. Or let's go sit over here where it's quieter so I can listen to you well. And any time that they are expressing feelings, validate their feelings and try to get them to express what those are. Then we can take it forward, and after they've calmed down, and try to figure out a way to prevent a lot of these escalations. And prevention then becomes a really good approach. Body language, you want to provide some eye contact, but not too much. A real slight bow in your head is a way to be non-threatening. Again, palms up and open. Nodding occasionally is really helpful, and then leaving the path to the door open so it doesn't feel like they're getting ganged up on. If additional people come because there's yelling, you want to make sure that you can let someone know that you're safe. as a staff person, and you can direct them to wait around the corner or back up, those types of things. But the more people that come in these situations make it difficult for the person to calm down because they feel ganged up on. So try to get the others to leave the area and to go away. But if you feel like you might be unsafe yourself, then you want to make sure you have someone who stays close enough by that you can call for assistance. Expressing empathy is a key point because they want to feel validated in the feelings that they have. So I can see how that would make you angry is a good statement. Redirection with games or music or television can help as well. So once you know what the triggers are for a person, we need to be proactive and try to meet that person's needs before a trigger occurs. Compensate for sensory changes throughout the day. So make sure that they see the sunlight at some point during the day. Turn the music down or move them away from loud stimuli if that's bothersome. Encourage them to be social throughout the day. Make sure that we're meeting their basic needs for pain and comfort and socialization or love as they go through the day and they're feeling like they're being cared for. And then always give them as many choices as they can have so that they have that feeling of control over their life. Then when we come back to our low, high, and emergency risk individuals, we want to think about what we do for action. So if our person's low risk, we're going to redirect them. Well, let's go for a walk, or let's go see if the fish are swimming around in the fish tank, or whatever that individual likes to do that's more calming. Offer verbal reassurance and time for that person to calm down. In high-risk individuals, we can remove ourselves from their personal space or others, and we can make sure that we've met those needs that they have. If it's an emergency situation, then we want to make sure that we remove self and others from the area if it's safe to do so. Decrease the stimuli, and then if the behavior continues to escalate, then we'll move to emergency steps or crisis steps. The crisis steps truly depend on your policy at your facility and how you would move forward at that time. So here's some characteristics of people who are good at de-escalating. And actually, I think most of these are characteristics of a lot of nurses. But you'll get better at this as you gain practice. And probably the two things that are most important are to express genuine concern and to appear non-threatening. Even guys who are very big can appear non-threatening by using some body languages and stance in order to help keep their body language open and non-judgmental. And then maintaining that personal control is of utmost importance to remain calm. And this also helps the patient feel secure knowing that someone is in control in the situation. You know what your verbal and nonverbal skills are when you're trying to be calm or to de-escalate a situation. So that calm voice and being aware of your own body language, but also using good facial cues and using active listening. Think about some of the things that in body language that indicate either power or aggression. And even in these two images, you can see that on the left, the ladies are kind of in a powerful position. They're not necessarily aggressive, but they if they had their arms and their stance a little bit differently, then the emotions of the situation are portrayed in a different way. And even with the individual on the right with those two pictures, one of them is certainly much more welcoming and friendly than the other. So we need to try to find those body language areas that help convey calm and openness and welcoming, and use those to our advantage anytime that we can. De-escalation techniques. We've talked about several of these, and there's a couple videos I'll have you watch that show some examples of them. So if we have a threat, we want to remove that threat. Each of these links is to a video if you want to go to it, guys. Additional videos that I don't believe I had on the integrity lecture. You want to create space, so that's that 45-degree angle, showing them that they have a way out. Step towards them at parallel to them. So you kind of move 45 degrees and towards them a little bit, and that is getting on their side. You also get on their side by making it sound like anyone else who's in the room is in the wrong, or that the paper boy or whoever it is did it wrong, and we need to fix that situation. If they're in a wheelchair or are much shorter than you, get down at or below their eye level. Hand under hand basically means that you put your hand under theirs, and that gives them a sense of power and control as well. And then keeping calm, relax your body, but attending to the other person's needs. And be willing to go where he or she is. So they're upset because of the paper, then let's talk about that. If they're having delirium because they are in the Navy and something's going on, then let's talk about the Navy and help move them in that direction to calm down. So being willing to go where he or she is kind of putting yourself in their situation, using their language and terms that are appropriate, and allowing that to follow through. And then you can turn the event around once we've taken care of or addressed their needs. So there's some really interesting videos I'd like to have you guys watch. They're on the Top Hat page that will help you to visualize what some of these techniques are like and practice some of those. We'll practice more of them when we come to the seminar. Our next seminar is April 12th, I think. So we will discuss those at that time.